What is going on, everybody? John Middlekauff, GoLow podcast. Subscribe wherever you listen. It's on the 3 and Out feed, Apple, Spotify. We got you covered. Listen live on AMP. Download Amazon AMP. All of our content live on AMP all week long. If you're watching on YouTube, love it. Smash that like button. Leave a comment. Any golf takes, put them below in the comment section. Subscribe to the page. And we'll dive into some golf stuff here in a second. But I got to tell you about the official ticketing app of this podcast, of GoLow, Gametime. Go to your app store, download the Gametime app. You want to go to a basketball game. You want to go to a baseball game. Get outside, get some sun. You want to go to a concert. I'm supposed to go to Morgan Wallen here in a month. He's got bad vocal cords. Not sure what's going to happen. We'll see. Keep my fingers crossed. You want to go see Morgan Wallen when those vocal cords get good. Here's what you do. Download the app. Use the promo code GOLOW. 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 Get $20 off. The official ticketing app of this show. You guys have been hammering the promo codes. I love their promo codes. I love the ticketing app. Get outside, take a friend, take your wife, have a good time. Do it on me. Save $20. Gametime, promo code GOLOW. Enjoy yourself. Here's what I was thinking about doing. Got a quick thought on this weekend, but not a lot's going on. We got the major championship right around the corner. We will dive deep into some gambling thoughts. I've already been looking at the card. I think there's a Xander Schauffele, Tony Finau, Max Homa kind of area that I'm going to play next week, as well as maybe a Hatton and a Fleetwood, maybe even a long shot Gary Woodland 100-1. But beside Wyndham Clark, which I think anytime you can get your first win on the PGA Tour, you know, like if you meet someone that plays in the NFL, you're like, oh, this is Billy, he played in the NFL. Well, if the guy's not famous, he might have been in the NFL for 2 years or whatever. And it's an incredible accomplishment, or Major League Baseball or whatever. Just like you meet a great golfer, it's like this guy played on the PGA Tour. It's unreal. But there's another level. Like this guy played on the PGA Tour for a long period of time and made money. That's really impressive. And then there's this guy played on the PGA Tour, made a lot of money, and won tour events. I think anytime you win your first tour event, whether you're a young player, whether you're an old player, it's just an incredible accomplishment. And now with these elevated events, to win $6 million doesn't get any better. Thank Tiger Woods, send him a thank you note, and really cool to watch. And obviously Wyndham Clark's story, you know, he's good buddies just following the Niner stuff. Christian McCaffrey and him are very, very close. He's a Scottsdale guy. Hell, I'd love to have him on this pod sometime. That he's really changed his mental game. I mean, that's a big part of his story, the mentals. Same with Max Homa, who I think they're buddies. Just in terms of the same, I guess they have a different coach. Boyd Summerhays is Finau, Wyndham Clark, and Taylor Gooch's coach. Obviously, all those guys, pretty good players. And Gooch and Wyndham have been playing really, really good of late. So it's cool to see any guy get their first win. And obviously, it's really cool to see a guy, heralded player. This happens a lot in golf. Whether you're like, an award-winning player as a collegiate golfer, just, a top-ranked amateur, a guy that everyone goes, this guy's going to have a lot of success, and it takes you some time. And it's cool to watch when that guy figures it out, and that's what it feels like it's happening. It happened to Max, a couple years ago, and it feels like it's happening to Wyndham Clark right now. And I root for that in golf, and he's a fun player to watch play, hits it a mile, and just kicked everyone's ass last weekend. Very, very impressive. But what I want to do at the beginning of the show is do a little mailbag at GoLow Pod, and just read some of your guys' mailbag questions, and then we'll dive into Sobel, who's fantastic as always. So just fire in those DMs. They are wide open, and ask your question. And we're going to mix it up on this show just because there's not as much going on in the golfing world with TPC Craig Ranch this week, which I got news for you. I'm probably not going to watch much. Speaks out now. You probably won't either. But next week's huge. The PGA Championship, second major of the year. Can't freaking wait. Let's start with Mike. Again, slide in those DMs at GoLowPod. Love both your podcasts. Was wondering how your boss handles your devotion to golf, as he has always said that he would not hire a person obsessed with golf. Well, I say this all the time, and I think I mentioned this on 3 and Out Mailbag the other day, is that I have to turn my hobbies in what I'm passionate about in life, and I have to monetize them because I'm not good at many things. So I watch a ton of football. I can talk about football, and we've turned that into a business. And I've done the same thing with golf, or attempting to do. We've just been running this podcast now a year and a half. I moved to Scottsdale for a reason. I'm a big believer that the golfing world and the football world intersect. And a little bit like when a singer moves to Nashville or an actor moves to LA, obviously I wanted to come here. I came here for several reasons. Whenever anyone asks, I say return on investment on my life. But there were business reasons, big picture, why I moved here. And I think golf and football are directly intersected. And hopefully that comes to fruition over the next, handful of years in my life. I'm pretty confident they will. But and as they do, Colin profits, as we all do. So it's the great part about this industry we're in. I would call it like the startup podcast. I don't even know how you could describe it a million different ways. You get to try a lot of different things. And there's visions of this that I have in the back of my head that are just, we gotta execute now, moving forward over this next couple year stretch. I'm pretty confident it'll all work out. And obviously, he's connected to that. So he's been nothing but supportive. And we'll just keep rocking and rolling. Now, here's the thing. Sundays in the fall, I'm not on the golf course. Hell, Saturdays on the fall, unless I'm teeing off early, I'm not on the golf course. You got to be disciplined in your life. Now, I'm not Tom Brady. I'm not just eating avocado ice cream and going to bed, at 9 o'clock every night. But I'm very disciplined when it comes to work. And, work comes first. And for a big part of my work is football. Now, football, I'm lucky. It's the easiest sport to consume. It's Thursday, Sunday, and Monday night, at least for the NFL, right? Watching these guys cover basketball, like, shit, I'd have no chance. It's like I couldn't every single day for a month on end. It's like, I don't even care. Thank God football. Whenever I hear people are like, football, let's make this thing 7 days a week. No, I think we're good. I like the way we're at right now. We're good. Even golf, like I get into probably obviously the majors and the big tournaments, but like, last week, and I gamble a lot on golf. I wasn't super locked in. I watched Sunday, but like Saturday, I was falling on my phone. I was doing other stuff. And that's the great part about golf. It's a little like baseball that way. You don't have to live and die with every single week. You pick your spots and you go all in. Now, again, I'm watching it. I watched it Thursday and Friday at my office in the background on ESPN Plus. But by the way, ESPN Plus, not a huge ESPN guy. ESPN Plus with their PGA Tour coverage, it's just fantastic. You just can watch, especially if you're a gambler and you're gambling on bigger name guys. It's just so easy to consume on Thursday and Friday. From Nick, do you think Scottie and Jon Rahm benefit from coming from elite college golf programs? Are they just that good? Or is golf just the type of sport where college performance isn't indicative of professional performance? Yeah, I think it has a lot of parallels like the football or basketball. You can be a great college player in any sport, and there is no guarantee that you're going to dominate in the pros, right? You can be a great college quarterback and then struggle in pro football. You can be a great college golfer and not have a pro career. I would say for the most part, most guys on tour, now there are examples, were elite college players. When you look at like the top 10. Now, Tony Finau didn't go to college. Xander Schauffele went to San Diego State, right? But Jon Rahm, elite player, Arizona State, which is like the equivalent of like Alabama or LSU for football at golf. Scottie Scheffler, Texas, like you said. But I talked to a guy in the golf business that said most people did not see this coming with Scottie. Where Justin Thomas or Jordan Spieth or Ricky Fowler or some of those names, people saw coming. Dustin Johnson, East Carolina. Brooks Koepka had to go to the Asian tours. So everyone, Max Homa was a national champion in college. And look how long it took him to become an awesome player. And then there are guys like Sam Burns, awesome college player, immediately awesome, right? So I would say golf would be the more difficult one beside, the Tiger Woods, Jordan Spieth, Phil Mickelson. I'd say Morikawa, Wolf, in Hovland's class felt like, Nick Bosa or something coming out of college. Like it was, you weren't going to miss on those guys. But it feels like there are a lot of guys, a lot of All-Americans, a lot of guys that win, as the Haskins Award or Player of the Year or whatever, or Big 12 or SEC Player of the Year. It's not a guarantee by any means. I was golfing in Mexico and I saw your video. Hope you're having a great time. Who's your personal favorite golfer? That's a good question. I would say whoever I'm gambling on that given week. With Tiger Woods' career basically being over and Phil Mickelson kind of riding off into the sunset, I don't really have one. I was a big Dustin Johnson fan. I loved his pace of play, hauled ass. He just dominated. But now that he's on live, I don't watch him as much. And I don't know if he's going to care as much, so his level of play is going to dip. But I was a big DJ guy. I would say people I'm rooting for right now. I root for Tony Finau for sure. I root for Tony Finau pretty heavily. I enjoy Jordan. I mean, I enjoy most of the typical characters. Love the content. Started listening during the NFL playoffs and been hooked ever since. I'm a high handicapper, but I got fitted and got some new clubs, and boy, have they made a difference. I don't understand the stigma of people saying getting fitted at a high handicap is a waste of money if it helps your game. I'd love to hear your take. Totally agree. Having clubs that fit you, we're all different sizes, right? You might see a guy who's 6'4", and you might see a guy that's 5'7". Should they be playing the same club? I used to go when I worked in radio to batting practice a lot. It was a really cool part of the job. It was, I went for work, but it was really kind of as a fan. I was like, God, I'm just sitting there batting practice. This is when the Giants were really good, and Bochy and Hunter Pence and Posey. Everyone has their own bat, right? Hunter Pence's bat is not the same size, weight, or length as Buster Posey's. Bryce Harper's bat is not the same as Derek Jeter's. Why wouldn't our golf clubs be different? So whether you are a home run hitter or a singles hitter, you're going to have a different bat. You want it to fit and be comfortable. Wouldn't it be the same with golf clubs? Just because you shoot 90 and I shoot 75, we're not going to play the same club. And the advantage I have for the club fitting me, whether I'm a good or bad player, is an advantage. So, yeah, I mean, I totally agree. I think it's a no-brainer. I've been listening to your show for a while. Congrats on the success. I just do not understand why people still root or are fans of Tiger. Can you please shed some clarity on this? Was he great? Of course. But he is just a horrible person. Scandal after scandal and very little charitable work. There are a lot of really decent guys out there. Even if you don't read this on the pod, thanks for your opinion. I'm going to push back on the charity thing. I think the Tiger Woods Foundation does a lot. And I'm not claiming to know the inner workings of it, but I think that's pretty well established. His foundation does a lot. I think it's like underprivileged kids with computers. I mean, all sorts of stuff. You can Google it yourself. The horrible person thing, like he's got some knocks on the resume that don't look good. Completely agree. Well, cannot argue that. I will say about this specific incident is that I do believe that it's harder for Tiger Woods to break up with a girl than you or me. I think there's a lot of complications. Like if Jeff Bezos, you follow Lauren Sanchez, Jeff Bezos' girlfriend, who used to, I think, date or be married to Tony Gonzalez. Like if they got in a breakup, like it's not just a normal, like, okay, we'll just go our separate ways. It's not how it works when you're worth hundreds of millions or billions of dollars. It's just not. Whether you're married or not married, it's going to get weird. There's no way he could just say, we're done. She packs up her shit and leaves. So when he sends her to the airport hangar to go to the fake vacation, I think part of it is, I'll never forget when I got hired at Fresno State. And during training camp, we would bring all sorts of different people, right? To give motivational speeches, to give serious speeches. And the head of police would come, Jerry Dyer, who I think might even be the mayor of Fresno now. And one advice he always gave was anytime you were having a verbal issue with a girlfriend, your wife, a lady, and it starts getting to a spot where I don't know where this is going to go, run, lock yourself in the bathroom or in a room and call the police. Because the moment you try to move her out of the way, things just get weird. And now, Tiger's never been in a situation where there's been domestic violence or whatever, but like, it's pretty clear to me that if he tries to break up with her, you got to move out, move all your shit. It could get weird and it could get weird fast and the cops can get called. Even if no one gets touched or whatever, there could just be a lot of emotions running high and it's all going to be pointed at him. So to me, when he just separates her, you got to leave, you move. it completely removes all that. So I think a lot of people are like, why can't you just break up with a girl normally? I don't think it's possible. The Elin thing, 100%. I don't know how you can blame anyone but Tiger. But this situation, like, I kind of understand where he's coming from. What's he going to say? Like, hey, honey, I'm over this. You got to go. Like, I don't think it's like, oh, yeah, no problem. Let me grab my sweatpants, grab a couple pair of my shoes. I'll just take the extra car. You'll never hear from me again. Good luck. Hopefully the ankle gets well, and look forward to watching you moving forward at Augusta in the old course. Like, that's not how it's going to go. So I will defend Tiger on the fact of this situation. Like, I don't know exactly how to handle it. Take her to an airport, pretend vacation. I don't know. I don't know what the right answer is, but I don't think you just smoothly like, hey, I'm kind of had enough of this. What do you think? I just, that's all I'll say. But I hear you. There are a lot, and this goes for the reason I hold Tiger to such high esteem is not because like I want to, teach my kids everything he did and them to act like that. It's just, I watched him in the peak of his powers and it was awesome. I don't know if everyone says Michael Jordan's the greatest guy, but I fucking love Michael Jordan. I think he's got some skeletons in his closet from his prime, but hell, might even still be rocking and rolling. But he was Michael Jordan. We hold the people that we grew up on that are the best. Like, listen, all these guys, a lot of guys on tour, clearly great guys, really good players. They can't hold Tiger's jock. I mean, he would annihilate them all in his prime. Kill him. He would be the best player on the PGA Tour right now by a wide margin. You should do a what's in the bag video. I was actually talking with a person that works for a club manufacturer, might be in cahoots and working on something. I need to go get fitted and maybe get some new sticks. But right now my clubs are just a couple-year-old TaylorMades, kind of a mix and match of wedges, a putter that I bought at the PGA Tour Superstore. But I hear you. We might got something coming down the pike on that one. Back at it again with my main man, Jason Sobel. Hear him every week on SiriusXM. Read him on the Action Network. I dove into that website. I mean, I didn't quite realize the in-depth gambling that goes on that bad boy. A lot of numbers, a lot of stats. Dove into some other sports, baseball. I mean, talk about numbers all over the map. The golf, much easier to consume, more my pace, Sobel. So I'm glad that's what we're talking about, because you dive into baseball like a random Tuesday. Holy moly, there's a lot going on.
I think golf is easier. Like, just because I've been entrenched in it for so long that when I sit here and talk about, I like this guy's a top 40 strokes gained putting, he's 31st this season and his birdie average is this, and I start getting into numbers and I'm like, it just makes sense because it's golf. Whereas I'll read some of the baseball stuff and it's like, here's why this pitcher should have under 4.5 strikeouts in the Phillies Padres game, and they're getting into WAR, and they're getting into BABIP, and they're getting into the WHIP, and they're like, I'm like, you've lost me. Other than I know that's a winning bet because everything they're telling you is like, it makes some sense analytically. But yeah,
I know.
I'm with you. There's a lot of information out there.
They're trying to monitor, who how the 4 starters pitch, and we're just trying to monitor who Tiger's next girlfriend is.
Not touching it. Not touching it. I told you before the pod started, and James wanted to press record 10 minutes earlier. That would have been a really bad thing. We went there, we talked about things, and now we're actually doing the on-air stuff. So I'm not going there. I'm not touching it.
Some people have interesting personal lives, and clearly Tiger does. Wish him the best in his future endeavors on that element of his life. But on a serious note,
honestly, just like break up with the girl in a normal way. Like, every guy has broken up with a girl at some point. Just do it and be like, hey, it's not you, it's me. It's not working out. Good luck with everything. I'll see you later. Let me know if you need anything, references, whatever, but I'll see you later. Instead, it's send her to the airport and have the lawyer break the news to her, and then we'll go through the NDA and we'll have lawsuits. I don't know.
It's weird. Like, the Tiger I grew up on, in the mid 90s, like when I was in junior high school, was just this cold-blooded killer. And then obviously the stories came out. And then he became, like, in my adult life, this much smoother dude, at least publicly, right? The way he acts with his friends and buddies and on TV. You could put him on with Nance in some of these events, and it was just like he just kind of matured the wrong way because he's always obviously a smart guy, but he's just let down his guard a little bit. It does feel that's still an element of his life that it's a little bit of throwback that he's holding on to, just not as tactful, you know?
Yeah. For a guy who has carefully crafted an image, a career, practice schedule, like everything about it has been like so carefully monitored and crafted and figured out that it feels like there are certain parts of the personal life. They're like, all right, let's throw stuff up against the wall and see what happens. Let's try this. And I don't know. It's just, look, I hope that he's able to bounce back from this professionally. I hope he's able to bounce back personally, privately, all that kind of stuff. I certainly won't be writing about it. You and I can kind of, just talk about it a little bit on here, but it's not like I'm going to sit here and do entire radio shows on Tiger's personal life. I didn't do that back in 2009. Certainly not going to do it now, but I don't know. Hope he can focus on his health and his golf moving forward. How's that sound?
Well, one thing's definitely different, right? The breakup with Stevie Williams was clearly pretty ugly, right? It was not a smooth break. I think you know better than me. The same kind of feels like goes for Phil and Bones. Some of these famous breakups, the two most famous guys the last couple decades were ugly. It's hard to even call it a split because it's not like Tiger's playing, but this clearly he's going to another bag full time. Feels much smoother, at least publicly. And anyone that's followed or read about Tiger's life sometimes publicly doesn't always follow what's actually happening. But I'm going to take this on face value because Joe and Tiger honestly feel like a Justin Thomas and Tiger, like the friendship and their closeness is really real. Tiger's obviously much in a different place in terms of age than he was with Stevie Williams. From everything, I'm sure, you've talked to a lot of people over the last 6-7 days about this. What have you heard about the split? Cantlay said he didn't ask Tiger, just all the different details from talking around.
Yeah, these things usually go from like manager to manager or, kind of go around the players themselves. There's very few times when a player will call another player, especially, I guess it's a unique situation, but that part doesn't surprise me. What the biggest takeaway for me is, and remember, you and I were doing this pod last week when the news came down, and I'm sitting there going, look, I don't think it's a 1 week thing. I think it might be more than just 1 week. I think this could be a long-term deal for Cantlay and Joe LaCava. And within a couple hours, we learned that indeed was the case. And so for me, the biggest takeaway here is that Tiger understands. And I know a lot of people said, oh, yeah, well, Tiger wasn't playing a lot of golf before this anyway, so we know he's not going to play anytime soon. To me, this is Tiger saying, no, like, it's not just I'm not going to play soon. Like, I don't have a golf career moving forward. He might play some events. He might play the Masters every year, might play the Open Championship every year if he's healthy enough to do it. But this is Tiger essentially waving the white flag and going, I can't in good conscience keep a guy like Joe LaCava, who's one of the best caddies of all time, on the bench 50 weeks out of the year, 49 weeks out of the year, just so he can come work for me when I'm going out to try to play a major championship once in a while. And so I think it's taken Tiger a couple of years to get to this point. I'm not sure that if Joe LaCava had come to Tiger with this 2 years ago, that Tiger would have had the same response. But now the fact that Tiger has this response, I think that speaks volumes about what he thinks about his own future.
A little trivia question for you. I don't even actually know the answer, but obviously there's been several caddies, including Joe LaCava, that have won multiple majors with multiple players, Would he be the first, if him and Cantlay win a major, to win a major with 3 different guys?
I would say unequivocally no. Top of my head. Oh boy.
Bones, obviously Phil, Justin Thomas, Stevie Williams, Adam, Tiger Woods, LaCava, Tiger, and Freddie Couples, correct?
Yeah. Was LaCava on Freddie's bag when Freddie won the Masters?
I think so, yeah.
I don't have the answer to that off the top of my head, just like you don't. I'm going to say that there absolutely had to be somebody back in the day who had done it.
not counting the Masters caddies that always just, for a long period of time, right? You couldn't bring your own caddy to the Masters. I forget the date that changed, but that there might be a guy that, clearly rattled off some dubs, in the 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s. But that's something to, on your radio show, that's a good one for you.
Should we start Googling this? You keep talking and I'll keep Googling.
Yeah, well, I got, last time we talked, Rory hadn't talked. We all kind of assumed what he was going to say, and he kind of admitted it. Like, I just needed a break, was over it, needed to reset. Then I sat down on my couch. Thursday, he played pretty well. On Friday, I mean, he was atrocious. It was like, it looked like me. I mean, he was hitting it all over the yard. He was terrible. Did not a great week for Rory. Is he going a little NBA style load management? And it's just going to be kind of Tiger Woods style. It's going to be about these 3 or 4 majors every single year. And the rest of this season, like, he's just going to try to peak next week and then in a month and then at the Open. I mean, that's kind of what it feels like.
I guess so. I mean, look, this is what all the elite level players are trying to do, quite frankly, is, I want my game to peak 4 times a year. If you're not going, and I maintain this all the time, look, if you're not going to be playing your best golf, go on out to Quail Hollow, and I know it's a designated event, and it's a bigger one, but go play not your best golf at something that's not a major then. And it's really, I almost think it's a little hypocritical of us, and I say us collectively, in the media and fans, when one of the top players isn't playing his best golf and it's not a major championship week, and we're like, what's wrong with so-and-so? Well, that same so-and-so has said, I want to play my best golf 4 times a year. I want my game to peak. And so we're like, well, why didn't it peak on that 11th time of the year that you wanted it to peak? It can't peak every single week. All of that said, when it comes to Rory, I don't know how to measure his mindset right now. There is we can look at strokes gained off the tee, strokes gained approach shots, strokes gained putting. We cannot look at strokes gained mental state right now for Rory McIlroy. And I don't know how we assess this. I will defer to my friend Gary Williams, who I did a radio show with yesterday. He filled in for Collins, and Gary was at Quail Hollow all week. He followed Rory for much of the week, and he was very pessimistic about Rory's short-term future, at least moving forward towards the PGA Championship. I said, are you buying or selling Rory McIlroy going into the PGA? And he said he would sell based on everything he saw from him last week. I don't know how much of that is the scar tissue left over from the missed cut at the Masters. I don't know how much of it is just the wear and tear on him mentally from answering all the LIV and PGA Tour questions over the past year and a half. I don't know how much of it is just not being able to manage his time the way he needs to. And some of this, and this is a great point that I heard. Where was it? I guess it was Shane Ryan's column that he wrote for Golf Digest, where he was speaking with Paul McGinley a couple of years ago. And this was like, remember the Players Championship was right at the start of COVID-19.
Yeah.
And this was like 2 days before they'd canceled the Players Championship. And he was speaking with Paul McGinley, and Paul was using as an example, Rory was in the interview room and he was asked about something, and he started delving into the coronavirus and is the U.S. prepared for it? And what does it mean through the CDC and all this stuff? And he's like, why is Rory talking about that? You've never heard Dustin Johnson talking about the government's preparation for an airborne disease. Like, play golf, worry about golf. Don't worry about all these other things. And he said it's almost hurt Rory McIlroy, the fact that he is such an eloquent, opinionated, thoughtful type person whose interests go way beyond golf. It tends to hurt his golf game because he's focused on so much else that's going on in the world.
Thoughts on the Wyndham Clark win? Obviously, he's been trending. Was a highly touted college guy, hits the ball a mile. As someone that had sprinkled a little money on Fleetwood and stuff, he just started running away from the field, and I thought he was fucking awesome over the weekend. Obviously, Saturday he was unreal, but even Sunday, and he talked about it. I didn't quite realize the story about the mental game this year is something that, because he's had the talent, but is something that he focused on being more positive. Homa's talked about this before. Some of these guys with these elite talent can be, I mean, it's the game of golf. It can really put you in a bad mental space if you stay positive. Holy moly, this guy, you wrote about him in your piece for TPC Craig Ranch. Like we got to talk about him, in the mix for the Ryder Cup.
So a lot of different pieces here. First of all, I wrote about it. If you haven't read my preview yet this week, I started the preview off with just talking about the makeup of the U.S. Ryder Cup team. To me, there's almost 10 locks. I mean, there's always illness, injury, prolonged slump, but for the most part, the top 10 are the top 10, and whether by automatic qualification or by wild card selection, I think we can pretty much put 10 names on that list. The final 2 names on that U.S. Ryder Cup team, I think it's going to be one of the great stories of the summer, this underlying subplot of, literally there are 24 players who can stake a claim for one of these last spots, including a couple of live players. So I think that's going to be really intriguing moving forward. As for Wyndham Clark this past weekend, I thought Quail Hollow was great. I thought the course was awesome. I thought the tournament was really good. Designated event at a big time major championship golf course. The only thing that went wrong was the fact that Wyndham Clark played too well. And so we had no drama towards the end. The back nine was essentially like a coronation for a guy winning his first career PGA Tour event instead of, hey, 6 guys have a chance with 3 holes left to play, which is what we always like to see. The mental side of the game is something that Wyndham is really, really tight with my buddy Drew Stoltz, the Sleeves, who has the show before me with Colton Oast on SiriusXM PGA Tour Radio. Drew told me a few months ago that very much based on Max Homa's success, that Wyndham was starting to work with, whether you call it a sports psychologist, a mental guru, whatever it might be, that he was starting to work with someone on that side of the game. And he talked very openly and honestly afterwards about just having the right mindset and being in the moment. And I think that's helped him immensely. As far as the physical, technical part of his game, he was a guy that I think people out there who are betting on a weekly basis and understand the betting markets and understand players' strengths and weaknesses. We've looked at Wyndham Clark over the last few years, a guy who drives it really well, puts it really well. Everything in between just kind of depends on the week. Sometimes pretty good, sometimes not so good. This year, he's turned himself into a better iron player than anything else. And you're seeing the success right now. Goes to show you that iron play rules everything. Doesn't mean you can drive it off the planet every hole. Doesn't mean you can hit it 230 off the tee. But as long as you drive it pretty well, if you're a really good iron player, you're going to find success. That's what he's done so far this year. And he is not going anywhere. I did a radio hit on a local Charlotte station yesterday, and they asked me about, we've seen Rory win for the first time at Quail, Ricky, and I said, let's not put those sort of expectations on Wyndham Clark. I don't think he's a guy that's going to start winning majors and be number 1 in the world, but is this a guy who could make the U.S. Ryder Cup team? Is this a guy who could challenge for a major championship? Is this a guy who could win one more time before the year is up? Yes, yes, and yes to all of those things.
Good childhood friends with the McCaffrey family. I don't know. Christian was fired up with him winning that. Obviously, if it wasn't for him, Xander wins the tournament pretty easily. He's a guy, a lot like Tony when these majors, come up that just feel like their game is just. You and I last week talked about Tony at the U.S. Open. I think a lot of people are going to be on him probably this next week too. Xander's another guy that. I just think as long as you can get them at 25-ish to 1 odds, relative for the top guys, he's right there, and we can talk all we want. He just doesn't get it done. But when they showed his stats going into Sunday against Wyndham, because they're actually not that far off in age, similar amount of career starts. It's like, and this is the hard part about golf, right? If you don't win, it's almost like we knock you. But when you look at him just rattling off and the amount of money the dude's making and his game, he's clearly, like you said, he's not just the top 10 lock Ryder Cup guys. Like he's near 1. He's closer to 1 than he is 10, in terms of the crew, right?
Right. We're sitting here talking about Xander Schauffele. Hey, what went wrong because he finished only in 2nd place? Whereas we're not talking about, someone else that finished in 41st place because there was no reason to talk about him. And so I always think
you like him next week.
I do like him. I just started making my list. I think he's going to be very prominently involved in my list. I will say that for as much as John Rahm and Scottie Scheffler have won already this year, and they've won some really big events, keeping their numbers short have helped out if you want to chase some numbers. I mean, you mentioned Xander at 25-1. I don't know that he'll be that high, that long, but I think at 20-1, he's a really nice play next week. Sungjae Im is the guy that I'm looking at. I think he's going to play really well at Oak Hill. You go back 10 years, and the guys at the top of that list, Jason Duffner, Jim Furyk, Henrik Stenson, they're all ball strikers. I mean, it's guys, if you're not hitting your irons well, you're just not going to perform that well on that golf course. And so I'm looking at guys, the strokes gained approach shots, stats, the greens and regulation, things like that are what I'm looking at for next week. And so Xander will feature prominently, I think, in my plays next week. And look, he's playing really well. I think that the biggest thing for him, if I'm advising Xander somehow and he listen to me, I think the biggest thing for me is you don't have to do anything differently. It's just, don't get your head down the fact that you're playing really well and not winning golf tournaments. At some point, the tables will turn. At some point, you wind up on top.
Well, no one's going to get TPC Craig Ranch, twisted with Augusta or Olympic Club, but it is an event this week. Jordan just backed out. Scheffler's playing. You got some plays. I know you kind of like some of the longer shots this week, and that's right up my alley.
Yeah, this is a week where we can chase some numbers, which is nice because, quite frankly, over the last handful of weeks, you haven't really been able to do that. I mean, I know Wyndham Clark was 60-1 last week, but it was really hard before the tournament to look past some lower numbers. So even if you had Wyndham Clark, you might have had a guy at 12-1, a guy at 18-1, a guy at 22-1 along there with him. So I am bypassing a lot of the short numbers this week. Look, can Scottie Scheffler go out and win this golf tournament by 5? Sure. But what we've seen over the last 2 years, KH Lee won with a score of 25 under 2 years ago. He won again last year with a score of 26 under. Anytime we get scoring that's that low in relation to par, it seems like it becomes more of a level playing field. It's more of a, hey, anything can happen. Some guy gets hot with a putter on the weekend, shoots a pair of 63s, and he can go win. It's less of a ball strikers kind of contest, something that would play into the hands of a guy like Scheffler. So some of the names on my list, the shortest number I'll have is Seamus Power, who opened at 45-1. He's after Spieth WD'd, he's probably about 35 or 40-1 right now. Still a pretty good number on a guy who has shown that he can go low at these kind of events. He's shown that he can win an event against an inferior type of field like we have this week. I'll rattle off a whole bunch of other names just because I've got them written down in front of me. Justin Suh, Jimmy Walker starting to play some good golf again. Scott Stallings told me a few months ago that this is one he added to his schedule based on looking at some analytics and what should fit his game, and he really likes it here. Michael Kim had him on the radio show yesterday. He lives nearby and practices at Craig Ranch, pretty decent amount. Eric Cole's played some really good golf as a rookie this year. So those are some of the names. And I think that not going into a Scottie Scheffler, not getting a guy with a short number, that allows us to play a few more players at longer odds, John. So I think you can chase some of those numbers.
Michael Kim's kind of an interesting name. I mean, he clearly is playing really well right now. Heralded college player, played with Max at Cal. I mean, was elite, right? I mean, Heisman Trophy at golf. He's won on the PGA Tour before. He's a guy that, for longer odds, even if you don't want to pick to win, top 10s, top 5s, in some of these, especially some of these events when some of the top guys aren't playing, he's a guy with some pedigree.
Really interesting stuff from him on the show yesterday. So if you don't know the story, 5 years ago this summer, he won the John Deere Classic. Kind of out of nowhere. And he told me yesterday, he said, I kind of won it too soon. I wasn't really ready to win a PGA Tour event yet. Got into the Open Championship the next week, finished in 35th place. That was fine. Didn't have a top 60 in his last 9 starts of that year. Okay, a little, kind of come down after a win, and that's happened. And, figure you go get him next year. The next year, he did not make the cut in an event with a cut the entire year. That was in 2019. 2020, he didn't make a single cut. He didn't make $1 in 2020 on the golf course. 2021 comes out and starts to slowly play some better golf, but not enough that we're really paying attention. Last year, a little bit better. All of a sudden now, he's working with Sean Foley. He's figured some things out. 2 top 10s in his last 6 starts. Hasn't missed a cut during that span. Like you said, playing some really good golf. finally had some confidence. He said he's worked on the game technically. He's worked on the game from a mental standpoint, emotionally, physiology, psychology, the physiology of golf, everything that he's gone through. I mean, he's reading books on how to succeed and how to have the right mindset. So working really well for him. So yeah, he's a guy that, I'll have a little sprinkle on outright, but I think for me, he's more of a top 10 play again.
Yeah, I mean, to me, there are two routes on the PGA Tour. There are the Scotties, the Sam Burns, the Spieths, the Justins to just hit the ground running. And then there are a lot of Max Homas, Wyndham Clarks, this guy, I mean, this guy's won before. It took Wyndham a little while, but you know what I mean? That just it's fucking hard. But then they figure it out and you're like, holy hell, this guy then goes on to have a longer career playing at a high level, making a lot of cash.
The Wyndham Clark trajectory that's the trajectory. That's the usual. That's the normal trajectory, so to speak. The
Scottie Scheffler's not normal.
Yeah, I mean, took a year or two to win his first event. Jordan Spieth, Colin Morikawa, those guys are not normal. When you get out to the PGA Tour and you start winning golf tournaments, and that almost does something to you later in your career. You almost need that adversity at first, kind of learning how to win. You start winning right away. Think about Jordan Spieth's mindset right now. He was winning so much as a young player in his early 20s that now when he's not winning on a regular basis, he's sort of like, well, I'm chasing the old version of myself, as opposed to someone like Wyndham Clark, who doesn't know any better. Someone like Max Homa, who started winning a little bit later in his career. I think, first of all, they appreciate it more. And secondly, they're not trying to chase who they were 5, 6, 7 years ago, because they weren't anything back then. And so they're building up to the success. And I think that a lot of times, at least in the prognostication game where we're trying to figure out who's going to play well, looking at the guys who have built up a resume and have gotten to that point and then started winning, as opposed to those who have won early and are trying to replicate that success. There's something to be said for playing the former over the latter sometimes.
For sure. And the reality with golf, it's going to get you at some point or the other, right? Ricky, Jordan took longer. For some of these guys, it happened right off the bat, but you're going to go through a stretch where you're going to contemplate, should I quit the game of golf? Because it's hard. It's a unique sport that way. Where in basketball, once Steph Curry or LeBron or Anthony Davis, you're just great, right? Until it's over. A lot of these guys just hit a lull and you never know when it's coming.
It happened to Tucker. I mean, if you're a professional golfer, all you have to hear is Tiger Woods went through multiple lulls in his career. The greatest player of all time.
He had the chipping yips.
He couldn't put a ball in the green from 10 yards away. I mean, this is to see that. I mean, that's either got to be very encouraging as a young professional golfer where you're like, Tiger went through it. I don't have to be perfect all the time. That's something that Homa's talked about a lot. Like, just because I don't shoot a good round, shoot a good score, doesn't mean I'm a bad golfer. Doesn't mean I'm a bad person. It just means I didn't shoot a good score that day. But it's either encouraging or it makes the game seem utterly impossible if you're like, well, shit, if Tiger Woods couldn't hit a ball on the green from 10 yards away, how the hell am I supposed to do it? He's the greatest of all time. I'm going out here trying to make a cut on the PGA Tour, and this thing's really, really hard. So, yeah, it's a tough game.
Yeah, if she really wants to make it sting, her final text to him should be, I hope you get the chipping yips again.
Oh
Godspeed.
Oh, my God.
Okay, so I'm kidding. Don't say that to Tiger. Have a good one. Talk to you next week. I'm sure from the PGA majors. Major season's off and running now. We got a couple majors and basically a 30-day span, so let's lock and load.
Can't wait. Hoodie season up in Rochester. Can't wait for that. And I think you have given girlfriends and ex-wives everywhere something to say is as they're walking out the door, hope you get the chipping yips. Bye.
See you, man.
Yeah.